Earth severs ties with the Galactic Council and leave the cosmos in panic. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Earth, a planet once considered a backwater in the vast expanse of the galaxy, a world of blue oceans and towering cities. But something has changed. A shocking move has been made, one that has sent ripples across the entire galaxy. Earth, once a humble member of the Galactic Council, has made the unthinkable decision. It has severed all ties with the most powerful political force in the cosmos. The announcement has shaken the galaxy, and now, the fate of Earth, and the rest of the universe, hangs in the balance. The Galactic Council, a powerful organization that had dominated the galaxy for centuries, had always seen Earth as a minor player in the grand scheme of things. But that perception has now been shattered. Earth's sudden and bold decision has left the other member species stunned, scrambling to understand the consequences. The Council has no choice but to respond, but what can they do when the very foundation of their power is being questioned? For humans, the choice was clear. After years of feeling manipulated, ignored, and oppressed, Earth's leaders finally took a stand. The Galactic Council's corruption, greed, and overreach could no longer be tolerated. But the decision came at a cost. As Earth broke away, the safety of billions was suddenly at risk. A new threat emerged, one that would test humanity's resolve. Back on Earth, Commander Jason Mills stood at the helm of Earth's defense forces. A brilliant strategist and fearless leader, Jason had fought in countless battles, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. This wasn't just about defending a planet, it was about protecting the very freedom that Earth had just claimed. As news of Earth's decision spread, Jason found himself faced with a mission more crucial than ever: protect Earth from an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. A faction within the Galactic Council, a dark and powerful alliance, was now determined to punish Earth for its defiance. Jason's orders were clear: hold the line, protect the people, and prepare for war. Earth had severed ties with the Council, and now they would need to fight for their freedom. But as Jason stood on the battlefield, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council wasn't going to let Earth go without a fight. And as he stared into the distance, he knew the struggle for humanity's survival was only just beginning. As Earth's decision to sever ties with the Galactic Council sent shockwaves across the galaxy, Commander Jason Mills sat in the command center of Earth's defense forces. The room was filled with the hum of various consoles and the flashing lights of urgent communications. Jason had always been a man of action, but today was different. His mind raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. Earth had always been a small player in the Council, but now, with the abrupt severance of ties, it had become the center of galactic attention. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The decision to cut ties with the Council was no small thing. It wasn't just a political statement, it was a declaration of independence, a challenge to the established order of the galaxy. And now, Earth was alone. His task was clear: protect Earth at all costs. The future of humanity depended on it. He walked over to a large digital map on the wall, showing various sectors of the galaxy. Earth's position, once just a dot among many, was now highlighted in bold red. The Council was not going to let this stand. The question was, what would they do about it? Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Lieutenant Sarah Turner, his trusted second-in-command. Commander, we've just received word from the Galactic Council. They're sending a fleet toward Earth. Jason's face tightened, his mind already calculating their next move. He knew that Earth's defenses were strong, but they were no match for the full might of the Council. This was going to be a battle like no other. How long do we have? Jason asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension. Approximately 24 hours, Sarah replied. They're already mobilizing their forces. Jason took a deep breath and turned to face his team. We'll need to be ready. Mobilize Earth's fleet and prepare for defense. I want all military assets on standby. No one outside this room knows what's coming, and I want to keep it that way until we're ready. Sarah nodded and began relaying orders to the rest of the command center. Jason knew the next few hours were crucial. Earth was facing its greatest challenge yet, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The Galactic Council would not take this betrayal lightly. If they were coming to Earth, they would come with everything they had. Jason glanced at the team gathered in the command center. There was fear in their eyes, but also something else, resolve. They were Earth's last line of defense, and they would not back down. The room grew silent as the first reports came in. The Council fleet was indeed on its way, and it was massive. Thousands of ships, each more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen, were heading toward their home planet. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he listened to the detailed reports coming in from across the galaxy. This was a fight they could not afford to lose. As the hours ticked down, Jason's thoughts turned to the people of Earth. He had joined the military to protect his home, but he never imagined he would face a threat like this. The galaxy was vast, and the Council's reach was far and wide. But now, it was Earth against the universe. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The decision to sever ties with the Galactic Council had been controversial, even on Earth. But in his heart, Jason knew it was the right thing to do. The Council had become corrupt and power-hungry, exploiting weaker species for their gain. They had been pushing Earth into a corner for far too long. But now, Earth was fighting back. He couldn't afford to let fear take hold. The people of Earth were counting on him, and he would not let them down. As the countdown to battle began, Jason stood tall, his resolve as strong as ever. This was not just about protecting Earth, it was about standing up for what was right. The Council would not control humanity any longer. Earth had made its choice, and now, they would face the consequences. The galaxy was about to learn. That Earth was no longer a pawn in the game of the Galactic Council, it was a force to be reckoned with. As the Earth Defense Forces prepared for what would be the most significant battle in human history, Commander Jason Mills stood at the heart of the war room, his mind racing with calculations and strategies. The tension in the air was palpable, a mixture of anxiety and determination that hung over every officer, soldier, and technician present. Outside, the skies were dark with the weight of impending conflict, and Earth's fate rested on the decisions made in these next few hours. The Council fleet was no longer just a distant threat, it was real, and it was coming for them. Jason glanced at the digital screens displaying the coordinates of the incoming enemy ships. They were fast approaching, and there was no time left for second-guessing. "Status report," Jason said, his voice cutting through the silence. Lieutenant Sarah Turner, his trusted second-in-command, stepped forward, holding a tablet with the latest data. "The fleet is now within range. We estimate they'll be in our atmosphere in 12 hours, she reported, her voice steady but laced with urgency. Jason nodded, processing the information. Every moment counted. "Are the defensive systems ready?" "Yes, Commander. All planetary defenses are online, but the fleet's firepower is still a concern. Our planetary shield can hold up against a few strikes, but sustained bombardment will overwhelm us," Sarah replied. Jason knew that their chances of survival were slim if they didn't strike first. "Activate the fleet," he ordered. The Earth Defense Fleet had been assembled in secrecy for months, its ships designed for one purpose, to defend humanity from threats just like this. A mix of old and new technology, the fleet was a symbol of Earth's resilience. It wasn't as advanced as the Council's ships, but it was scrappy, resourceful, and, most importantly, determined. Jason's mind flashed back to the moment when Earth had made the fateful decision to cut ties with the Council. It had been a bold move, and he knew it had sparked anger throughout the galaxy. The Council had treated Earth as an insignificant player for far too long, using its power to manipulate and control. But the people of Earth had grown tired of being pawns. They wanted to be free, to stand on their own terms. Jason had been part of the mission to sever those ties, and now, it was time to face the consequences. Earth had no allies in this fight. They were on their own, and it was up to him and his team to protect their home. Launch the fighters. Prepare the interceptors for engagement. I want all ships in position to defend Earth, Jason commanded. The room erupted into activity as soldiers, pilots, and technicians scrambled to put Earth's defenses into motion. Jason turned to Sarah. Make sure the civilian sectors are evacuated. I don't want anyone caught in the crossfire. Understood, she said before hurrying out of the room. Jason watched her go, knowing that the battle ahead was not just about survival, it was about freedom. Earth was standing up to the galactic powers that had kept it in the shadows for centuries. As the clock ticked down, Jason reviewed the final plans in his mind. The strategy was risky, but it was their only chance. He would lead the charge, taking the fight directly to the Council's fleet, hoping to catch them off guard. If they could disrupt the Council's formation early, they might be able to buy enough time to protect Earth. But there were no guarantees. This was not just a military operation, it was a statement. Earth was no longer going to bow to the will of the Galactic Council. They were fighting for their future, for their right to determine their own destiny. Jason felt a surge of determination as he looked out the window, watching the first of Earth's ships launch into the sky. The battle was about to begin, and no matter what happened, Earth would not be intimidated. The Council might have the power, but they would soon learn that humanity's strength was in its will to fight for what was right. The universe was about to witness the rise of Earth, and Jason Mills was ready to lead the charge. As the Earth Defense Forces readied themselves for the coming storm, Commander Jason Mills stood at the center of the operations room, watching as his team scrambled to prepare Earth's fleet. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, the urgency of the situation pressing on everyone's shoulders. Jason's heart beat in his chest like a drum, but he kept his face steady, showing no signs of fear. There was no time for doubt now. This was the moment he had been training for, the moment he had sworn to protect Earth from. As the last of Earth's interceptors launched into the sky, Jason felt a sense of pride. They were ready, even if they were vastly outnumbered. The enemy fleet was already within range, and Jason could see them on the radar, a massive armada of ships, each one more advanced and powerful than anything Earth had ever faced. He knew this would not be an easy fight. "Commander, all ships are in position," Lieutenant Sarah Turner said, her voice steady as she stood by his side. "We're ready to engage." Jason nodded, his eyes never leaving the display. "Good. Prepare the fleet for immediate engagement. We'll need to strike fast and hard before they can establish full control over Earth's orbit." He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to all fleet commanders. It's time to show the Council that Earth will not bow down to them." The officer nodded and pressed a few buttons, sending Jason's voice out to the entire fleet. "This is Commander Jason Mills. Listen up, everyone. We are the last line of defense for Earth. This is our moment to prove that humanity will not be crushed beneath the boot of the Galactic Council. We will fight for our right to be free, and we will fight for every person on this planet. We may be outnumbered, but we are not powerless. Today, we show them what Earth is made of. Prepare for battle." Jason's voice echoed throughout the fleet, and he could feel the energy shift in the room. The soldiers and pilots were no longer just responding to orders, they were fueled by something greater, something that had been brewing for centuries. The time for submission had passed. As the countdown to battle began, Jason turned back to the battle map. The first wave of Council ships was entering Earth's orbit, their weapons primed and ready. Earth's fleet was positioned on the defensive line, ready to engage at a moment's notice. Jason's strategy was simple: hit hard and hit fast. They needed to break the Council's formation before they could establish their dominance over Earth. "Fleet commanders, initiate the attack," Jason ordered. The space around Earth erupted in a blaze of fire and light as Earth's fleet moved into action. Fighters launched from the main ships, streaking through the void to intercept the incoming Council ships. Laser beams lit up the sky as Earth's defenders made their move, striking first to catch the Council off guard. The battle was intense, far fiercer than anything Jason had ever experienced. The sky was filled with the sound of explosions, the screeching of engines, and the desperate cries of soldiers fighting for their lives. Jason's eyes darted from screen to screen, tracking the movements of the enemy ships, guiding his fleet through the chaos. It was a delicate balance of strategy and instinct, and Jason knew he had to stay focused if they had any hope of winning. "Status report," Jason demanded, his voice calm but forceful as the battle raged on. "We've taken down 5 enemy ships, but they're starting to regroup," Sarah replied. "Their main fleet is still intact, and we're taking heavy losses. We need reinforcements." Jason gritted his teeth. He knew that reinforcements weren't coming. Earth was on its own, and they would have to make do with what they had. He looked at Sarah, his expression hardening. "We fight until the last ship falls. No retreat. Earth's future is on the line." The battle stretched on for hours, each moment bringing new challenges and unexpected twists. Jason's mind never stopped calculating, never stopped planning, as he guided his fleet through wave after wave of enemy forces. But despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's fleet held its ground. The first signs of a turning point began to emerge as more Council ships were destroyed, their forces scattering as the human fighters pressed on. Jason could feel the momentum shift. Earth's will to survive was proving stronger than the Council had anticipated. And though the battle was far from over, Jason knew one thing for certain: this was not a fight Earth was going to lose. The battle above Earth continued to rage, the sky a chaotic web of fire and destruction. Commander Jason Mills stood firm in the command center, his eyes fixed on the countless digital displays tracking the progress of the Earth defense fleet. Their enemies, the mighty Galactic Council, were relentless, but Earth's fleet, though outnumbered and underprepared, had proven more resilient than anyone could have predicted. Jason's mind was sharp, constantly calculating the next move, looking for any weakness in the Council's forces. As Earth's fighters clashed with the enemy's advanced warships, the battle had begun to take a toll. The losses were mounting, and despite their fierce defense, Earth's forces were stretched thin. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Eastern Defense Grid," Sarah Turner, his second-in-command, reported as she paced beside him, glancing between the screens. "We're taking heavier hits from their cruisers. They flanked us." Jason felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. The Council had more firepower, more ships, and they had the advantage of numbers. But Earth had something they didn't: human ingenuity, grit, and determination. "We need to counterattack. We can't let them get comfortable," Jason said, his voice cold with resolve. "Send out all remaining bombers. I want their flagship disabled. We're going for a direct hit on their command vessel. That's the key to breaking their forces." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with the same fierce determination that burned in Jason's chest. As the bombers launched into the fray, Jason turned his attention to the larger picture. Earth's fleet was slowly but surely starting to push back the Council's advance. The enemy was regrouping, and Jason knew that now was the moment to strike harder, to capitalize on their growing momentum. But just as things seemed to be turning in their favor, a new wave of Council ships emerged from the far side of the system. Jason's heart sank as the new ships appeared on the radar, their size and firepower dwarfing anything Earth had seen so far. "Commander, we've just detected an additional fleet," Sarah said, her voice strained. "It's massive. It's an entire battalion of dreadnoughts. They're coming straight for us." Jason's eyes flicked to the new fleet on the screen. It was the final blow the Council had been holding back, and they had used their trump card. The odds were now impossibly stacked against Earth. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. It was a moment of reckoning. He had always known this day would come, but the stakes had never been so high. Earth's survival, the future of humanity, rested on the edge of a knife. There was no time for hesitation. "All remaining fighters, fall back to defensive positions," Jason barked. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. I want every ship moving in unpredictable patterns. We have to make it hard for them to hit us. Don't give them a clean shot." As the order went out, Jason turned to face the tactical screen. The new fleet was massive, but Earth had the advantage of being unpredictable. The Council's forces may have been larger, but Earth was the underdog, and that meant they could be more agile, more inventive. Jason's strategy was to make the battle chaotic, a storm that would throw the council off balance. As his orders were carried out, the battle became a frenzy of maneuvering, explosions, and sparks flying from the ships. It was a brutal, high-speed ballet of destruction. "We're losing more ships by the minute, Commander," Sarah said, her voice tight. Jason could feel the tension in the room as the stakes grew higher. Every decision he made now could mean the difference between victory and defeat. "We need to disrupt their command ship," Jason muttered to himself. He studied the screen, his eyes scanning for any weakness. And then it hit him. A weak spot. One of the dreadnoughts was slightly out of position, trailing behind the main formation. It was a small gap, but it was all Jason needed. "Deploy all bombers. Target the dreadnought at coordinates 1327 by 4450. Take out their engines. We need that ship disabled, now." The bombers launched, streaking through the chaos, targeting the lone dreadnought. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the action unfold. The enemy ship began to crumble under the force of the bomber's strikes, its engines erupting in a flash of light. For a brief moment, Earth's forces had found an opening. The dreadnought fell back from the fleet, its power source disabled. The Council's forces began to falter. "We've got them on the ropes," Sarah exclaimed, a hint of hope creeping into her voice. "Push forward, Commander." Jason knew they had to take advantage of this. "All remaining ships, focus fire on the command ship. We hit them now, before they recover," he commanded. The final phase of the battle had begun. Earth was far from victory, but they had finally turned the tide. As the enemy began to retreat, Earth's fleet pressed forward, pushing them back into the void. Jason stood at the command center, his body tense, his mind working over the next move. But for the first time in hours, he allowed himself a small breath of relief. Earth had held its ground. The Council had been forced to retreat. But Jason knew this battle wasn't over. It was only the beginning of a much larger war. Earth had shown its strength, but the galaxy would not forget the challenge it had just faced. Jason turned to Sarah, his gaze hardening. "Prepare for the next phase. We've only just begun." The dust had barely settled after Earth's victory in the first wave of the battle against the Galactic Council's fleet, but Commander Jason Mills knew that this was far from over. The space above Earth was filled with wreckage, burning husks of enemy ships and the remains of Earth's own fleet, each one a testament to the cost of the battle they had just won. Jason stood at the heart of the operations room, his eyes scanning the tactical displays as reports flooded in from every corner of the Earth Defense Forces. The Council had been pushed back, but they were far from defeated. The newly arrived dreadnoughts had been momentarily crippled, but the rest of the enemy forces were regrouping. The Council would not go down quietly. Jason's fingers drummed nervously on the console as he ran through the options. "We've held them off for now, but they'll come back in full force," Sarah Turner, his trusted second-in-command, said as she stepped beside him, her face lined with exhaustion. Jason nodded. "We've bought some time, but not enough. We need to act fast before they bring in reinforcements." He turned to face his team. "Status update on our fleet. We've lost 30% of our fighters, and the dreadnoughts are still operational despite the damage," Sarah replied. "We have enough firepower to make a difference, but we need to keep the pressure on them. If we don't, they'll regroup and come at us with everything they've got." Jason's jaw clenched. The stakes were higher than ever. Earth had shown the galaxy that they could stand up to the might of the Council, but now they needed to prove that they could finish the fight. "What about the civilian sector?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Are we ready to evacuate?" Sarah nodded, though her face betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "We're prepared, but evacuating entire cities would take longer than we have." "It's not ideal, Commander. If the Council returns with reinforcements, we may not have time to get everyone to safety." Jason knew that the situation was critical. He had promised to protect Earth, and that meant protecting its people. But he also knew that the battle for their survival was far from over. The galaxy would be watching, and they would not back down. "We'll make do with what we've got," Jason said, his voice firm. "I want all ships to go on the offensive. We strike now, while the Council is still disoriented from their defeat. We have one chance to turn this around. Let's make it count." As the orders went out, the Earth Defense Fleet repositioned itself, and the remaining fighters launched into the fray. Earth's fleet was smaller, but it was a force to be reckoned with, built from years of preparing for this very moment. Jason's mind raced as he analyzed the battle ahead. They had to keep the pressure on. If they let the Council regroup, Earth's chances of survival would diminish with every passing minute. "Commander, we've just received word from our spy network," Sarah said, her voice tight. "It looks like the Council is sending in another fleet, larger than anything we've faced before. They're bringing in reinforcements from other sectors." Jason's heart sank, but his face remained hard. This was exactly what he had feared. The Council would never let Earth go without a fight. "How much time do we have?" he asked, his voice steady despite the rising sense of urgency. "We estimate they'll be here in 4 hours, maybe less," Sarah replied. Jason took a deep breath, then gave the order. "Deploy everything we've got. We don't have the luxury of waiting. We'll fight them head-on, just like we did before. Earth's future is on the line." The fleet began to mobilize, and as Earth's ships took to the skies once more, Jason's thoughts turned to the people below, those who had trusted him to protect them. He could not afford to let them down. As the battle entered its final stages, Jason found himself at the center of the most intense fight of his life. The Council's forces were massive, and though Earth's fleet was putting up a fierce resistance, it was clear that the Council had the upper hand in terms of sheer numbers. But Jason refused to back down. He had promised to protect Earth, and he would not fail. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, he was fighting for the future of humanity. The sound of explosions filled the air, the crackling of energy blasts echoing through the cold vacuum of space. Earth's ships held their ground, but the enemy was relentless. Jason's thoughts raced as he calculated their next move. They needed to disrupt the Council's reinforcements before they could establish full control. "Sarah, I need a diversion," Jason said, his voice low but commanding. "Get as many ships as possible to create chaos at their rear. Draw their fire and force them into a defensive position. We'll hit them from the front." "Understood, Commander," Sarah said, and within moments, the fleet was shifting into position. Earth's ships launched their final attack, a coordinated strike that sent shockwaves through the Council's ranks. Jason's heart raced as he watched the action unfold. This was their chance. The Council's forces were thrown into disarray, and Earth's fighters pressed on with renewed vigor. Jason knew that this was the turning point. The battle was far from over, but Earth was fighting back with everything it had. And for the first time in hours, Jason allowed himself a brief moment of hope. Earth wasn't just surviving, it was fighting to win. The battle was reaching its boiling point, the skies above Earth a chaotic tapestry of flashing lights, explosions, and the deafening hum of energy blasts. Commander Jason Mills stood in the heart of the operations room, his eyes scanning the tactical displays, tracking every move, every ship, every blast. The stakes had never been higher, and as Earth's fleet fought with everything it had, Jason knew they were facing a turning point. They had struck hard and fast, but the Council's reinforcements were not to be underestimated. Their dreadnoughts, massive and powerful, had regrouped, and now they were pushing back with an overwhelming force. The loss of fighters had been substantial, but Earth's fleet had held strong. "Commander, the rear defenses are faltering," Lieutenant Sarah Turner's voice cut through the tension in the room. Jason turned to face her, his expression unwavering. "How bad is it?" "We're losing ground, Commander," Sarah replied. "The enemy has adapted to our tactics. They're regrouping and pushing forward with a second wave. We don't have much time before they overrun our position." Jason clenched his jaw, taking in the grim reality. Earth's forces were stretched thin, but they had one advantage, their resolve. "We're not backing down," Jason said, his voice firm. "We've got one last shot. We need to cripple their flagship. Take out their command center, and the rest of their fleet will fall apart. Do whatever it takes to make that happen. Sarah's eyes widened for a moment, the weight of the mission sinking in. Understood, Commander. I'll inform the fleet. As Sarah left to relay the orders, Jason turned back to the tactical screen, his mind racing. The plan was risky, too risky, but it was their only option. They had to destroy the Council's leadership or risk losing everything. The fate of Earth and humanity depended on it. Moments later, Earth's fleet sprang into action. Fighters and bombers regrouped and accelerated toward the Council's flagship, dodging incoming fire as they closed in. Jason watched with a mixture of anticipation and dread as the fleet moved into position. If this didn't work, they would lose everything. As the first wave of bombers reached the enemy flagship, the air was filled with the shrill sound of energy blasts and the hum of high-powered engines. Jason's fingers tightened on the edge of the console, his breath held as he watched the attack unfold. The bombers unleashed their payload, their missiles streaking toward the flagship. For a moment, the Council's defenses seemed to falter. The massive flagship shook under the assault, its shields flickering as the missiles tore into its outer hull. Jason allowed himself a brief moment of hope, but it quickly faded as the flagship retaliated. A burst of concentrated fire tore through the sky, and one of Earth's bombers was obliterated in an instant. The enemy's firepower was overwhelming, but Earth's fleet pressed on. Commander, they're retaliating with full force, Sarah reported, her voice tense. We've lost a third of our bombers, and their shields are regenerating faster than we can damage them. Jason's heart sank, but he refused to give up. The plan had to work, Earth's future depended on it. Keep up the pressure. I want all ships targeting their weak points. Their flagship's command center is the key. We take that out, and the rest will follow. Yes, Commander, Sarah replied, the determination in her voice matching Jason's own. The battle intensified as Earth's fleet pressed harder, forcing the Council's flagship to focus all its fire on their forces. Jason knew they were close, they were starting to wear the enemy down, and soon, they would have a clear shot at the command center. As the final wave of bombers reached the flagship, Jason's eyes never left the screen. This was the moment that would define their fate. The bombers fired their payload, the missiles streaking toward the flagship's command center. Time seemed to slow as Jason watched the missiles collide with their target. A blinding explosion lit up the space, and for a moment, the entire battlefield seemed to hold its breath. The enemy flagship shuddered violently as its command center was obliterated, its power core destabilizing from the impact. The Council's forces faltered, and Jason could see the confusion spreading through their ranks. We did it, Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. The flagship is down. Their command is in disarray. Jason didn't allow himself to feel relief yet. Don't let up. They are still a threat. We need to finish this before they recover. Earth's fleet pressed the attack, and as the Council's flagship finally disintegrated, their forces began to scatter. The tide of battle had finally turned. The enemy's once unshakable grip on the galaxy was slipping away, and Earth's defenders were proving that they would not be intimidated. As the final enemy ships were destroyed or forced to retreat, Jason allowed himself to take a deep breath. The battle was won. Earth had survived. But Jason knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not forget this defeat, and the galaxy would never be the same. Earth had made its stand, and now, it was up to humanity to shape its future. As Jason looked out at the remains of the battlefield, he could feel the weight of what they had just accomplished. The fight for Earth's freedom was far from over, but for now, Earth had won. And that, in itself, was a victory that would resonate throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The silence that followed the battle was deafening, but it was a silence filled with a sense of both victory and heavy loss. The battlefield above Earth was littered with the charred remnants of enemy ships, the once mighty Galactic Council fleet now a shattered shadow of its former self. The Earth Defense Fleet, battered but unbroken, hovered in orbit around their home planet, their ships returning to the hangars after the grueling fight. Commander Jason Mills stood at the command center, his face grim but proud as the reality of their victory began to sink in. Earth had survived. But at what cost? The loss of fighters, bombers, and precious ships weighed heavily on his heart. He could hear the buzz of conversations around him, the technicians and officers discussing the aftermath, the status of the fleet, and the civilian sector. Earth had been saved, but the scars of the battle were deep, and the consequences would ripple throughout the galaxy for years to come. Jason's mind was sharp, though weary. He knew this victory would send a message to the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth, thinking them weak, isolated, and easily controlled. But today, Earth had shown its true strength, its resilience, its determination, and most of all, its ability to fight back when pushed to the brink. Yet, as Jason looked around, he knew that the fight was not truly over. The Council would regroup, rebuild, and they would come for Earth again. It was inevitable. Earth had made an enemy of the most powerful force in the galaxy, and they would not be left alone for long. Commander Mills, Sarah Turner's voice pulled Jason from his thoughts. She was standing beside him, her eyes still sharp despite the exhaustion in her posture. The Council has made contact. They're calling for a ceasefire and offering negotiations. Jason looked at her, his expression hardening. He had expected this. After such a significant defeat, the Council would be forced to consider the possibility of peace, at least for a moment. But Jason knew better than to believe in their intentions. The Council was not a body that gave up easily. They would only negotiate if they believed it would benefit them in the long run, and Jason was not about to let them dictate the future of Earth. What are their terms? Jason asked, his voice calm, though a storm raged inside him. Sarah paused, then spoke with a quiet intensity. They want Earth to rejoin the Galactic Council. They're offering us special status, but only if we agree to stop any further military action and return to their control. Jason clenched his fists. The offer was an insult. The Council believed they could simply erase Earth's newfound independence with a few diplomatic gestures. He had no intention of letting that happen. Tell them we'll consider their offer, Jason replied coldly. But Earth will not be dictated to anymore. We fought too hard to win our freedom, and we will not return to the Council's control. Sarah nodded, but Jason could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She was a loyal officer, but even she understood the gravity of the situation. Understood, Commander. She left to relay the message, and Jason was left alone with his thoughts. The weight of leadership had never felt heavier. As the leader of Earth's military, Jason had been forced to make decisions that would shape the future of humanity, but now, with the Council's offer on the table, the path forward seemed more uncertain than ever. Should Earth risk further conflict, or should they accept the offer, albeit on their own terms? Jason knew there were no easy answers. Earth had fought for its independence, but that was only the first step. The real battle was yet to come. The galaxy was vast, and Earth had made a powerful enemy in the Galactic Council. Jason glanced out the window of the command center, the Earth below bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of the victory, the weight of knowing that Earth had held its ground against the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But that moment was fleeting. There was still work to be done. The Council's offer was just the beginning of a new phase in Earth's journey. Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Sarah returning. Commander, she said, her voice steady but urgent. The Council is preparing to send an envoy. They want a direct meeting to discuss the terms of their ceasefire. Jason's eyes narrowed. Send them a message. Tell them we will not be a part of their negotiations unless they acknowledge our independence. Earth is not going to be a subordinate again. If they want peace, they will have to meet us as equals. Sarah nodded and left once again, and Jason turned his attention back to the view of Earth. The path ahead was uncertain, but Jason was certain of one thing: Earth would not bow to the Galactic Council. They had fought for their freedom, and they would continue to fight to keep it. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson today: Earth was no longer a pawn in the Council's game. It was a force to be reckoned with. And Jason Mills would lead them through whatever came next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the world below seemed peaceful, untouched by the conflict above. But Jason knew that peace would not last. The galaxy would be watching, and the next move was up to them. The sun had long since set, casting a cold, steady darkness over Earth's surface. Above, the stars shone brightly in the void of space, a calm contrast to the chaos that had engulfed the planet just hours ago. Commander Jason Mills stood by the window in the command center, his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the infinite expanse. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. As Earth's defenders picked up the pieces of their victory, the Council's offer still loomed over them like an unwanted shadow. Jason had seen the destruction and the cost of the conflict, too many lives lost, too many ships destroyed. But there was no turning back. Earth had made its stand, and Jason had made a promise to protect his people, no matter the cost. "Commander, the Council's envoy has arrived," Sarah Turner's voice broke the silence. She stepped into the room, her expression unreadable, but Jason knew what was coming. The Council wanted peace, but at what price? "Prepare to meet them," Jason said, his voice calm but firm. "We'll listen, but on our terms." Sarah nodded, a small but respectful gesture. "Understood." As Sarah left to make the necessary arrangements, Jason sat down at the command table, his mind racing. He had thought about this moment, about what he would say to the Council, what they would ask of him, of Earth. The negotiations would be delicate, and Jason had no illusions about what was at stake. The Galactic Council was not known for compromising easily, and Earth was no longer willing to accept being manipulated. As Jason prepared to meet the envoy, his thoughts turned to Earth's future. They had proven themselves today, but that was just the beginning. The Council was a massive, sprawling entity, with power and influence across the galaxy. Would they ever truly accept Earth's independence, or would they continue to view humanity as nothing more than a nuisance to be crushed? Jason's mind wandered back to the battle, the explosions, the screams, the final push to destroy the enemy flagship. It had been a defining moment in history, a moment that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Earth had won, but the cost had been steep. Now, with the Council's emissaries on their way, Jason was about to find out if the peace they sought would come at the expense of everything Earth had fought for. Moments later, the Council's envoy arrived at the command center, a sleek ship gliding smoothly into position above Earth. Jason watched as it descended into the landing bay, its polished exterior reflecting the lights of the command center. The doors of the ship opened, and out stepped the Council's representatives, two alien diplomats, their faces cold and unreadable, their uniforms regal and imposing. They were here to negotiate, but Jason knew the true nature of these meetings. The Council was not here to bargain, they were here to reclaim their power. "Commander Mills," one of the diplomats said as they approached, their voice smooth and detached. "We come in the name of the Galactic Council, with an offer of peace." Jason stood tall, his gaze unwavering as he met the diplomat's eyes. "Earth has no need for peace under your terms," he replied, his voice steady and resolute. "We will not be subjugated again. We fought for our freedom, and we will keep it." The diplomat's expression flickered for a moment, but they quickly regained their composure. "We understand your position, Commander," the diplomat said, their tone condescending. "But we must remind you that the Council is the governing body of the galaxy. Your rebellion, though impressive, has cost many lives. We are prepared to offer you a place in the Council's fold, with special status, autonomy, but under our supervision. Think of it as a partnership, Commander, a chance for your people to thrive alongside the greater galactic community." Jason felt a surge of anger but kept his composure. "And what do you expect from Earth in return? To become just another puppet under your control? No. We will not be your subjects." The diplomat's eyes narrowed, but they remained silent for a moment. It was clear they hadn't expected such resistance. "We offer you resources, protection, and trade routes that will benefit your people," the diplomat continued, their voice growing colder. "You may not realize it now, but without the Council's influence, Earth will be a target for every rogue faction, pirate group, and enemy force in the galaxy. This offer is the only way to guarantee your future survival." Jason's eyes hardened. "Our survival does not depend on your protection. We fought for our freedom, and we will continue to do so." The Council may have the power, but Earth has something more, humanity's will to fight. We will defend ourselves, and we will not bow down to your demands. The diplomat's expression remained stone-faced, but the tension in the room was palpable. Very well, the diplomat said, their voice icy. If Earth refuses to cooperate, we will not be responsible for the consequences. With that, the envoy turned and exited the room, leaving Jason to stare after them, his fists clenched at his sides. The negotiations were over. The Council would never accept Earth's independence, not willingly. Jason knew that the fight for humanity's future was far from over. Earth had made its stand, but the war for its survival would continue. As the diplomat's words echoed in his mind, Jason turned to Sarah. "Prepare the fleet," he said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "The battle for Earth's future is just beginning."